Hi everyone, today we will be seeing the subject biology and we will learn something about cells and its environment. So we will see how cells are functioning and what is the effect of their environment on the cells. So in this chapter or in this video we will see three basic parts. The first is types of cells. How many types of cells are there, how we can differentiate between these types of cells. Second, modes of transport. Which are the modes of transport by which the cells transport different molecules in and out the cell. And third, that is active transport. What is active transport? Okay, so let's go. Before moving further, let's first clear the basic funda that what are cells. So as we all know that all the living organisms are made up of cells. Now, when I talk about living organisms, I talk about all the microorganisms, plants, animals and humans. We all are made up of cells. So, we can say that cells are structural and functional unit of any living organism. Now, cells are very tiny entity. That means they are very small structures. So, we cannot see them by our naked eyes and we need a particular specific instrument called microscope. Now, microscope is an instrument under which the cell can be seen or visualized. To understand the concept of cells in a better way, we can compare the cells with the bricks that unites to shape a large building. How? Let's see. Yes, this is a large building. You can see it, right? Now, this building is made up of small bricks. The bricks that looks like this. Same way, there are very small or tiny cells which unites together to form a whole body. You must be knowing the sequence that different cells unite together to form a tissue. Different tissues unite together to form an organ and different organs unite to form together a body. So this is how cells are the basic structural and functional units, or they are the building blocks of our body, and this applies for all the living organisms. Now, on the basis of their origin, that from where the cells have been originated, they can be of two types. Which two types? So first are animal cells. Those cells which are seen in all animals and humans. And next are plant cells. All those cells which are seen in plants, right? Now let's see the difference or the basic difference between animal cell and plant cell. Okay, so let's see how animal cells and plant cells are different from each other and how we can differentiate between those two. First, let's talk about animal cells. So when we talk about animal cells, these cells lack the cell wall. That means there is no presence of cell wall is found in the animal cells. And next, when we talk about plant cells, these cells have the cell wall. Now, what is cell wall and how we can differentiate between them? So for this, let's see the figures. So this is the image of an animal cell. In animal cell, all the cell organelles. Which cell organelles can be there? So there can be nucleus, endoplasmic reticulum, cytoplasm, cell membrane, etc. can be there. Now, in animal cell, the cell membrane, or this is the outer membrane. This membrane is the outermost membrane for the cells. There is no presence of any extra layer, or there is no presence of any extra protective layer called the cell wall. Now, how the cell wall can be differentiated? So, let's see it. Now, this is the image of a plant cell. In this image, you can clearly see that after the cell membrane, there is an extra protective layer called the cell wall. This cell wall protects the plant cells and they give the plant cells the rigidity. That means the plant cells cannot be stretched, they cannot change their shape, and under any harsh conditions, the cell won't literally die because they can anytime retain their shape if there is not a very big issue happened with the cell. Like if there is no very high toxic amount of substances present in the cell, or if the cell has a normal condition, then the cell will stay in the normal condition, in the normal shape due to the presence of cell wall. So the cell wall provides rigidity to the plant cells. In an animal cell, no cell wall is present. Here the outermost layer is cell membrane. This is outer layer, and here the outer layer is cell wall. Okay, so I guess we are clear that how we can differentiate between animal cells and plant cells. Okay, now let's see that why there is a need of movement of substances in and out the cell. Now, first thing is that cells need food materials to, when I say that I want to go out, I want to play, I want to use my mobile phone, I want to go in a park. So for all these things, I will require energy. And for my requirement of energy, I will need food. That means in simple way, energy is the source by which we can do anything and everything. And energy comes from the food that we eat. Now cells need food materials too. Why cells need food materials? So first reason is to form energy. We need energy to perform all our functions. Now in our body, the energy currency is ATP. In simpler words, let me try to explain it, that if I'm living in US, then my currency is dollars. I cannot take any other currency of the world and go to any shopkeeper to buy the things. That person won't give me anything. Why? Because the outer currency is not valid here. The only currency that works in US is dollars. The same way in our body, the currency that we accept is ATP. So cells need food materials to form the energy and build up their cell structure. If cell wants to be in the shape, then they have to maintain or build up their cell structure. So for this, they need food material, and this food material has to go inside the cell. So by this we are clear that why there is a movement or there is a need of movement of substances inside the cell. Okay. Now let's see that by performing all these processes, or to perform all these processes, the cell will need water. We usually observe that while eating, while taking our meals, we usually take liquid compounds with that, right? So that provides the water. So all these cells require water, and in presence of water and all the food materials, they perform different chemical reactions. So by the generation or by the performance of chemical reactions, there are some waste products are produced. Now, what are the waste products? So, if we talk about nutrition, so by nutrition there can be some salts, some acids, which are excess for our cell. The cell doesn't need all these salts and acids. So if these constantly accumulate inside the cell, my cell will die or it will get poisoned due to their effect. If I talk about excretion, or if I talk about respiration, so I can take the example of urine and carbon dioxide. While the taking example of excretion, in humans you go for urination. Now that urine is a waste product of our body. We cannot continuously hold urine in our body for a longer time. The same way for respiration, carbon dioxide is a byproduct and that is toxic to our cell. So by performing all these chemical reactions, there are these type of waste products are produced inside the cell, and they are toxic for the cells. So it becomes very essential to get rid of these waste product, or else what would happen? This waste products would upset some reactions and they can also poison the cell. In presence of these waste products, my cell may get poisoned and it may get killed, or its some functions will be altered. Now, if I say that all these substances, whatever I said that they will come inside and they will go out, so all these substances will pass through the semi-permeable cell membrane. Now, this is my cell wall, so this is the cell membrane if I'm talking about animal cell. So, this cell membrane is semi-permeable. Semi-permeable means it will allow only few things to enter and few things to leave the cell. Not all the things are allowed to live or enter the cell. So all these substances that come inside the cell or that goes outside the cell passes through the semi-permeable membrane. And for this transportation, there are many mechanisms. So we can say that there are two ways in which these substances can either enter or leave the cell membrane. Which are two methods, or which are the two ways? So the first is active transport. When we say anything active, that means we are talking about energy. So here energy is required, and in the form of ATP. It is very important that in the form of ATP, the energy is available, then and then only active transport will take place. And the second is passive transport, where no energy in the form of ATP is required. Okay, so these are two ways by which these substances can either enter or leave the cell membrane. Now, before going to active transport and passive transport, we must just brush up all the things that we have done earlier or we know already. What are these things? First, we'll talk about concentration. What is concentration? So it can be defined as concentration is the measure of amount of subcomponent in a solution. When I talk about solution, I talk about two things, solvent and solute. Solvent is something in which my solute is dissolved, and solute is something that gets dissolved in the solvent. So let's take the example of this salt and water. Right? So what happens here? This is my pure water. In this glass, I have taken pure water and I'm adding salt into it. So water is my solvent and the salt is my solute. So when I say that how many amount or how many molecules of salt are there in my water, then I'm talking about the concentration of salt. If I say that there is 6 grams of salt in 50 ml of water, then I will say that this is the concentration of salt molecules per 50 ml of water. So this is how, by the means of concentration, we try to show that how many or how much amount of subcomponent is present in the solution. Next thing, concentration gradient. What is that? So concentration gradient occurs when concentration of particles is higher in one area than another. If we take the example, then I have two beakers. First, here I have the molecules here. So there is a high concentration of particles in this area initially, and there is no concentration of particles here at the 0-second time. So what will happen that after some time, my all particles will be diffused or arranged equally. This occurs due to the formation of concentration gradient. Due to this, my molecules from the higher concentration will move to the lower concentration. So this is how concentration gradient works. Now let's see what is active transport. So in active transport, we already mentioned earlier that the transport of substances occurs with the use of energy. And the movement occurs against the concentration gradient. That means that molecules will definitely not transfer from their higher concentration to their lower concentration. and the energy will come from the ATP. The examples of active transport can be first, reabsorption of glucose, amino acids and salts in nephron. Nephrons are the structural and functional units of kidney. Here the urine formation takes place. So while the formation of urine, the reabsorption of glucose, amino acids and salts occurs due to the means of active transport. Next is sodium potassium pump, that is seen inside the cell, that deals with the sodium and potassium ions concentrations. Next is absorption of solutes from soil against concentration gradient in plant roots. That means active transport can be seen everywhere, in animals, in plants and in humans. Okay. Now, why active transport only? So, active transport is the movement of particles through a cell membrane from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration using the energy. Here, energy is used in the form of ATP. During diffusion, molecules travels in and out the cell without any control. There is no control on coming and leaving of the particles during diffusion. So due to this, what happens that anything can enter or leave the cell, and which may result in two things. First, either the compound can be toxic. If the entering compound is toxic to cell, it will poison the cell. Or some important compounds will leave the cell which is already needed inside. Example can be sodium ion, right? So to stop all these things, active transport takes place. Now let's see what is active transport. What is its mechanism? So during active transport, carrier proteins play essential role. Now carrier proteins means those proteins which carry the substances. Now these carrier proteins are specific carrier molecules. Right, they are specific carrier molecules which are substance specific. Substance specific means they will only choose a particular substance and allows only these selected substance to pass through the membrane by the use or aid of energy. Energy is used in the form of ATP. And these proteins, carrier proteins, are arranged in the cell membrane and they are known as protein channel. If this is my cell membrane, then these carrier proteins are arranged this way. So they form a channel. That's why we call them a protein channel. Now, how it works? So this is the figure which shows how active transport occurs and how it is different from passive transport. So in active transport, these are the protein channels or carrier molecules. The molecules from outside or inside can bind with these carrier molecules, and with the use of ATP or energy, they will transport the molecules either inside the cell or either outside the cell. While talking about passive transport, what happens in diffusion, the molecules directly diffuse into the cell. There is no need of any carrier molecules or carrier proteins. While in case of facilitated diffusion, there is a need of carrier proteins, but they do not use ATP. ATP is used only in active transport, and that is how by the use of ATP, active transport becomes very special. When we study active transport, we come across to three things, that is antipod, sympod and unipod. What is that? So this is the image that shows what is unipod, what is sympod and what is antipod. So in unipod, only one molecule will either enter or leave the cell at a time. While sympod and antipod are co-transport. In this condition, if we talk about sympod, two molecules will at a time simultaneously enter the cell or leave the cell. But two molecules will move in the same direction. When I talk about sympod, they will move in the same direction. Either they both will enter the cell or they both will leave the cell. While in case of antipod, one molecule will enter the cell and other molecule will leave the cell. If we go by definition, then we can say that unipod is a transport of any one molecule without coupling to the transport of other molecules or ions. In case of antipod, there are two molecules move together, but they move together in opposite direction. One molecule goes out, then another one will come in. And in symbiote, two molecules move together in one direction. Either they both go out, either they both come in, right? So this is all about active transport. Now let's see that what are the possible questions that can be asked in exams. So the first is explain active transport. So here you will define what is active transport. You will give the figure of active transport. You will show what are the carrier proteins, and you will give the importance of active transport that we already discussed in the video. And the one marker questions can be what is antipod. So antipod is a system where one molecule will go out, then another will come in. That means the transport of molecules will occur simultaneously but in opposite direction. In sympod, both molecule will travel in the same direction, and in unipod only one molecule will travel at a time. And what are protein channels? So they are present in the active transport. They can be seen in active transport, and these protein channels are important because they carry some specific molecules. Okay, so this is all from my side. I hope I made you understand this thing in a very better way. Thank you so much for watching this video, and for more videos like this you can visit wasscerix.com. Till we meet again, thank you so much. Take care. Bye bye.